Hi everyone, my name is Maria and today I'm gonna give you a short class of 5 of the biggest mistakes in doing brows that I see so often with my clients and with my students. Today I have this beautiful model with me, and as you probably already noticed, brows that are done so wrong can make even a beautiful face look uglier. I want you to take a close look to her brows on this side. Tell me in the comments if you like it or you don't like it, because from first view you might say that these brows are actually done very well. They're pretty trendy, the lines are sharp, they're thick, you can properly see that the brows are there. But spoiler alert, this is how you shouldn't do brows. And let's take a look at her other side where nothing was done yet. Honestly, this is that moment when brows that haven't been processed actually look better than this kind of brows. Start with the most obvious mistake, and in this case it's the color. Girls, please run away from too dark brows, and in her case I used on purpose dark brown, or it's almost black, because it never flatters your face and it does make you look older and angrier. Not only it makes the brows look more thick, it also gives you an aggressive expression. The second mistake is that the beginning of her brow and the end are not on the same line, and while a bit of difference is not considered a mistake, because you see that her natural brows are already growing a bit higher. That's completely fine, it's actually nice, but don't exaggerate. Even if your brows grow that way, you shouldn't make them on purpose even higher, like I did in this case. The effect that it gives is that you create this kind of samurai brows and you make them shorter. Because if we take classical brow, it should actually follow the natural shape of the eyes. And as you can see, her eyes do grow slightly this way, but exaggerating this feature makes against her natural features. Another mistake that I see so many people making, especially people that just started doing brows or people who didn't take any course but they just learned from TikTok or other platforms, they over laminate the hairs. You can see here the result of over laminated hairs makes the shape look way more fake than it should be. Even here without lamination it does look better than in this case. Not only it doesn't look aesthetical, also ruins the hairs. Especially if you have a client or a model like this girl, that her natural hairs aren't too thick, you can damage the hairs and it will result in falling. I can assure that this customer not only will refuse repeating this treatment, but will also not come back to you. Another mistake is when we use for makeup powder and we don't use a pencil. And I made on purpose two dark brows using a very dark brown, and I made a very blocky beginning of the brow. Just try to use, if you are brunette, a color that is 2 tones lighter than your hairs, and if you're blonde, use a color that is 2 tones darker. Just easier, and I prefer to use pencil. Also, what I see a lot of people doing this mistake is applying too much concealer and making this bottom line too sharp. It results again in a very fake brow that looks like tape on her face. The most important in doing brows is when you don't take in consideration who is in front of you and what kind of features this person has. For example, she has very beautiful eyes and lips, and by making too dark and thick brows, we actually take the accent and we remove from her beauty by putting an accent somewhere else where it's not needed. And I understand that you are maybe a brow master or you're doing your makeup at home. Just try to not exaggerate in whatever technique you're using. Do it more natural, because as women in a classical way we have to put accent on our eyes and lips and not on brows. Alright, and now comes the good part. I'm going to show you how to do brows in a proper way, or at least how I prefer to do them. And as you can see, her brows are very nice, but the tail is a little bit over plucked, and we will fix this with makeup or with tint. As you can see, the hairs are pretty soft themselves, and therefore I don't want to make a very strong lamination because she just doesn't need it, and I will traumatize her hairs if I'll process them for too long. And I start by applying the first product of lamination. And I always start with the base, being very careful with baby hairs. And because I want to do a very soft lamination, I will only keep this product for a few minutes. In her case, it's just 4 minutes. Alright, we processed the hairs. This is also a reason why I don't do strong lamination, because when I see that the shape is missing hairs, for example, like it's missing here at the tail, if we will do a very strong lamination, it will ruin the shape. So I applied the first product. As you can see, they're already softer. And before I apply the second product, I brush them in the position that I want to see them at the end. So the front's a bit more vertical, and from the middle to a tail, I position them sideways like this. And I apply the product carefully. In cases like this, when your model doesn't have very thick hairs, you don't need to apply a lot of product. Okay, and the golden rule for lamination, the second product, you have to keep the same amount of time as the first product, no matter the brand that you are using. Okay, now I wipe it again. To avoid this mistake that happened here of too dark brows, after applying laminating products, I always let the hairs rest for 1-2 minutes, and only after that I apply color. So I will first wipe the brows with a bit of water, and I will even apply hydrating lotion to give them a bit of moisture, and then I apply the color. Because before coloring, there should be no product of lamination left on the hairs. It's very important. Now I will apply hydrating lotion, and to be honest, I always experiment with these products. I don't have one product that I prefer for this. But if you're looking for something that would moisturize the hairs during lamination, I would just go for a product that is not oily. For example, like this Korean moisturizer that I use right now. It will hydrate the skin and the hairs, but it will not make them oily. Because if they're oily, then color will not stick to the hairs. And then if you apply a moisturizing product, you have to keep it for at least 5 minutes on the hairs. And after that, you are safe to proceed with coloring. Alright, now we are ready to color the hairs. I like that now they're more hydrated, so the tint will stick better. And always remember that after lamination, the hairs take the color faster and stronger. That's why, on purpose, I make a lighter color and I keep it for less time than I would normally do if I wouldn't do lamination. When you apply tint, you have to be careful, meaning that you shouldn't go out of the line, and at the same time you have to be fast, because as I mentioned earlier, the color sticks stronger after lamination, so don't be too slow, because you can end up having this brow if you keep the color for too long, especially if you choose the wrong color. Because I want to keep them very natural, I kept it just for 2 minutes. And in her case, I decided not to color the skin, just the hairs, because they're already pretty thick. The rest, the missing parts, I will add with pencil. And don't try to have the perfect sharp brow like here. It's better when the hairs are more visible than the color on the skin. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, I will fix the missing parts in the brow with makeup. And also never forget to explain your customer how to take care of their brows when they leave from you, because it might be very nice and easy for you, but for your customer at home it can be pretty difficult. So I usually give my customer a mirror and I explain everything that I do. In her case, I will apply the pencil here, and as I said, even if she has dark hairs on her head, I use a pencil that is lighter, and I add the tail where she misses some hairs. I make the arch softer. And that's the good thing about using a lighter pencil, because with a lighter pencil you don't have to be extremely careful. Whereas if you apply a dark pencil, every mistake or every small difference in tonality is noticeable. Okay, a bit here. I like when I keep the fronts very light, so I will not apply there anything. Okay, and the next step will be concealer. And I can work with it also in a sharp line like I did there, but the trick is to blend it very well with her own skin so that you don't have a sharp line. And I also don't like to create sharp lines on the upper part, and here I just add a bit of concealer to cover some imperfections on skin. Like this, and I blend it. At the end of the treatment, I always explain my customer how to take care of their brows afterwards. So it's very much recommended to use a brow gel, because I created my own gel, Bambi. I will use this one on her brows. And it's important to not take too much product, especially because they are already laminated. And you apply it by very soft movements. It's white when you apply it, but then it dries and it becomes invisible. And it's no problem if they come out of shape. I prefer to do them this way, and then with the same brush I place them very soft inside the shape. I don't like when brows are exaggerated and they look too much high, but everyone has their own preference, so you just need to explain your customer how to use it, and then they decide themselves what's best for them. Okay, and the last step of lamination, I apply the hydrating oil at the end. It's the third step of lamination. And you explain your customer to not wash the brows for 24 hours. It's also recommended to use at-home masks or other oils that they have at home to nourish the hairs, because lamination, even if it's done in a very soft way, it still dries the hairs, so it's good to maintain them at home as well. Okay, we're done now. Okay, so now we're done, and you can clearly see the difference between brows that are done well and brows that you wouldn't want your customer to have. Tell me in the comments which brow do you like more, and if you ever done a mistake from those that I mentioned earlier. Okay, I can't let you live with this brows. I'm gonna correct it for you.
Yes, please.